Hello, my name is Lucas. This is a bit of lit. I want to talk about The Ring Goes South, the second half of the Fellowship of the Ring, the first of three parts of the whole of Lord of the Rings. Probably the best part. Definitely the best of the two that I've reread so far. Let's just get into it. We start with Frodo waking up in Rivendell, and he meets up with Bilbo again. And they have a little conversation about the ring that Bilbo has left behind for Frodo. And it gets a little bit ugly. Bilbo wants to see the ring again, but Frodo is unwilling. And Bilbo, I'm sure you've seen it in the movie. You know that face. Bilbo does that. He changes a little bit, very briefly. And then he sort of comes to his senses. Shortly after that, we get the greatest info dump of all time. The Council of Elrond. We learn everything that there is to know about the ring. That is important. We learn about what's going on in Gondor, what's going on around Middle-earth, what's going on with Gandalf, what was he up to, where did he go, what took him so long. We hear his story about how he got caught up with Sauron, who is now the Many-Colored, and a ring maker. And I really love it. I just love that part when Gandalf is talking about Sauron, because it starts almost immediately with he was wearing a ring, and you just know everything that's about to happen is bad. And it is bad. And I love the way Sauron is portrayed so far as this opportunistic sort of despot, and he's, totally changed Isengard from this beautiful place to, he's basically corrupted it with his own evil, and it's been destroyed for his own purposes. And I guess there's some symbolism with him being the many-colored instead of the white. He's no longer pure, and it's sort of radiant and all over the place, in a way. And then we find out that he was close behind, and he was weaving off some of the riders as they were chasing. We'll find out, which Gandalf already knew, but we find out that Gollum escaped due to possibly a midnight raid in Mirkwood, while the elves let him go for a nightly walk, and he was up in a tree and he wouldn't come down. Possibly planned and staged, very likely. And we learn about what all the struggles Gondor is going through, and how they're basically holding everything back. And Boromir, the representative of Gondor, is there not so much to recruit soldiers to help, but just to get some wisdom on what this prophecy, sort of prophecy, is about. And it all relates to Frodo and this whole story, of course. And then we get to what has to happen, which is somebody must destroy the ring, because it is an ultimate power. It's an evil power that is just too much. And it's just, I love it. I love it so much, because it really, we get to see that the rippling effect of the evil of Sauron and what's going on in Mordor, it's having an effect all over the world. And there's sort of chain reactions happening. Something that happens here is affecting over there, and something that happens there is affecting what happens there, and so on and so forth, and it all comes back to Mordor. And it's an incredibly dangerous situation, but, of course, luckily we have a brave hobbit who says something along the lines of, "I will take the ring to Mordor, though I do not know the way." And I love Frodo in that moment. He's incredibly courageous, you know, and it's just like, this is too much for one person to bear. He's already struggling with the ring in and of itself. I mean, we get many times that it feels heavy on him, and throughout this, we get many times that it continues to feel heavier and heavier, and it's a burden for him, and it's not something he wants to do, but, you know, everybody's been arguing about it, and he decides something needs to be done, because I don't want any of what might come with Sauron and his evil deeds. As much as I don't want this, I want that even less. So I will be the one. I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. And Frodo, you know, he's my favorite Hobbit. I mean, Sam is my boy, don't get me wrong, but I think personally, yes, Sam is the hero, but I don't know, there's something about Frodo that just resonates with me a little bit more than Sam, personally, even though I also really relate to Sam in some ways. Anyway, let's move on from the Council of Elrond. They head off, and they're trying to make their way. The Fellowship of the Ring does not have to follow Frodo to Mount Doom. They can go off at least, you know, to a certain point, and then they can peel off and go their own way. It's up to them. There is no sort of contract to say, this is what you must do. And we've got Gandalf as the leader, Aragorn as another leader, and Legolas and Gimli and Boromir and the four hobbits all go as well. And they, you know, oftentimes we see Gandalf and Aragorn talking with each other about what the next move will be. And they seem confident in each other, and, you know, they tend to go with what they think is best. They try to go up through this mountain, and in the movie, you know, it's a snowy mountain, and in the movie it seems that it's Saruman that is using his voice, which we will get to later. I think that's a really smart addition to the movie, that Saruman uses his voice, because this is a big deal, Saruman's voice, in Lord of the Rings, though not yet. Here it's a different being, Cardaras, and it's alright. He gets him out, and they have to go through Moria, the Mines of Moria, which nobody wanted to go through. But all the same, they do, and they find it sort of desolate, and there are just remains behind with nobody home. And they find the tomb of Balin in the record room, and they find out. This chapter is another amazing chapter because it reads very much like a horror chapter. The only issue I have with it is that, I mean, it is okay, but Gandalf is translating what he's reading. You know, they are coming, this kind of thing. But it's a little annoying when he's like, oh, I can't read this word, and then it goes on about this, and I don't know what these next few sentences are, and this has been washed out, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I find that a little, it's taking away from the tension and the drama, but still, like, when he's not saying, I don't know what this says, and he, you know, it's like, what's gonna happen? And we get orcs and all kinds of crazy stuff, and the Balrog, and it's amazing the way the Balrog is built up. You know, he hears the word for fire in their language, and then finally he's revealed, and it's just like, oh my god, this is terrifying. I am horrified. And where am I? Here we go. This is the page. Oh, that's the page that Gandalf dies. Yeah. And we've got Frodo showing a little fire, too. He uses his sword and he stabs, and he gets stabbed, too. But let me see. Oh. Yeah, gosh, muttered Gandalf. I wonder if that is what they meant, that the lower levels are on fire. Still, we can only go on. Soon the light became unmistakable and could be seen by all. It was flickering and glowing on the walls away down the passage before them. They could now see their way. In front, the road sloped down swiftly, and some way ahead there stood a low archway. Through it, the glowing light came. The air became very hot. When they came to the arch, Gandalf went through, signing to them to wait. As he stood just beyond the opening, they saw his face lit by a red glow. Quickly, he stepped back. There is some new devilry here, he said, devised for our welcome, no doubt, but I know now where we are. We have reached the first deep, the level immediately below the gates. This is the second hall of Old Moria, and the gates are near. Away beyond the eastern end, on the left, not more than a quarter of a mile. Across the bridge, up a broad stair, along a wide road, through the first hall and out. But come and look. And, you know, they keep going, and things are coming closer and closer, and finally, yes, Legolas turned and set an arrow to the string. Though it was a long shot for his small bow, he drew, but his hand fell, and the arrow slipped to the ground. He gave a cry of dismay and fear. 2 great trolls appeared. They bore great slabs of stone and flung them down to serve as gangways over the fire. But it was not the trolls that had filled the elf with terror. The ranks of the orcs had opened, and they crowded away, as if they themselves were afraid. Something was coming up behind them. What it was could not be seen. It was like a great shadow, in the middle of which was a dark form, of man shape maybe, yet greater, and a power and terror seemed to be in it, and to go before it. It came to the edge of the fire, and the light faded as if a cloud had bent over it. Then, with a rush, it leaped across the fissure. The flames roared up to greet it, and wreathed about it, and a black smoke swirled in the air. Its streaming mane kindled and blazed behind it. In its right hand was a blade like a stabbing tongue of fire. In its left it held a whip of many throngs. "Aye, aye," wailed Legolas, a Balrog is come." Oh! I'm very, very passionate about that, that particular part. And of course, Gandalf holds off the Balrog and the trolls and the orcs and all that, but goes with the Balrog to their fate. Sadly, of course, this amazing moment where the leader of this fellowship is lost, the most powerful being we've actually seen, besides maybe Sauron, I guess maybe Elrond too, at this point. No, I think Gandalf is more powerful than Elrond, probably, but the most powerful person in the Fellowship is gone. The leader is gone. And we see a sort of change with Aragorn, too. Aragorn starts to show he's not as confident without Gandalf. But he still wants to make sure he does what's right and lead. He wants to see his city again one day and be the king. But he's sort of lost something, and they've all lost something, and they're all deeply hurt and worried by the loss of Gandalf and the Mines of Moria to the Balrog. But that will get taken away, and we will get Gandalf again, unfortunately. But anyway, you know, that's for another time. Still great, still love Gandalf, but I am starting to see a little more depth to all the characters. Of course, after the Mines of Moria, they're in Lothlorien, and they meet with Galadriel and some of these other characters, and they're caught by the elves in this forest that when the leaves, you know, start to turn in fall and winter, they turn gold, and they never fall down until the new green leaves come and sprout. But with the evil in the world, the rippling effects of the evil of Mordor, that will all be taken away, unless the ring is thrown into the fire, in which case it will all disappear anyway. It's never, basically this place that has no evil at the moment will never be as it used to be, because the elves are losing their power and they're going out west and, you know, all this other stuff. And we've got this other amazing chapter with Galadriel. I think I said Galadriel and then Galadriel. Please forgive me for keeping changing. But she, you know, before they depart, she gives them all different gifts. She gives Frodo the phial with the light, and she gives Sam some earth that he can use from her woods to grow whatever he wants, and he'll be the envy of the gardening world and all this stuff. He gives Gimli 3 strands of her hair, and Legolas a bow, and, you know, some other things to the men. And but before that, they talk about her mirror where she can see things, and she's with Frodo. She sees the eye. They see the eye. Right before that, she shows that she has one of the elven rings. Yes, she said, divining his thought, it is not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond could not do so, but it cannot be hidden from the ring-bearer, and one who has seen the eye. Or, I guess it's after, so sorry. Verily it is in the land of Lorien, upon the finger of Galadriel, that one of the 3 remains. This is Nenya, the ring of adamant, and I am its keeper. And it just, like, this whole part is just terrifying, because at this moment, Frodo is trying to give up the One Ring, because it's too much for him. He knows it. He wanted to take it, but he recognizes her power, and even though he tried to give it to Gandalf, and Gandalf said, no, I'm too powerful, and, you know, that would be a really bad idea. Galadriel laughed with a sudden clear laugh. Wise the Lady Galadriel may be, she said, yet here she has met her match in courtesy. Gently are you revenged for my testing of your heart at our first meeting. You begin to see with a keen eye. I do not deny that my heart has greatly desired to ask what you offer. For many long years I had pondered what I might do should the great ring come into my hands, and behold, it was brought within my grasp. The evil that was devised long ago works on in many ways, whether Sauron himself stands or falls. Would not that have been a noble deed to set to the credit of his ring, if I had taken it by force or fear from my guest? And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair. She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore there issued a great light that illumined her alone and left all else darkness. She stood before Frodo, seemingly now tall beyond measurement, and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman, clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. I love it. Anyway, so they leave her place, and they end up going down the Great River and sort of taking refuge in this spot that Aragorn knows. And at this moment, they're trying to decide what to do, because, again, Aragorn is having a difficult time making the right decision, because he sort of really relied on Gandalf, and he's not sure of the best choice, because he, you know, Boromir is starting to talk a little bit more about Gondor and going back and helping with that fight there. And, of course, Gondor is Aragorn's rightful throne, and he wishes to see it, but they do need to get the ring to Mount Doom, but nobody is obliged to help. But he leaves it up to, you know, everybody else pretty much wants to go to Gondor. Legolas and Gimli, but he leaves it up to the ring bearer. Should we... Ow. go east or west. On the west side, we're going through Gondor and all that, but on the east side is where the enemy is. And I fear that the enemy is growing in numbers on the west side, too, of this river. Frodo wants an hour to think things through. And so he gets that hour, and Boromir comes along. Now, my good friend, not Boromir. Boromir is not my friend. My good friend, Mr. Nothing of Around the Weird, says that Boromir is a fail son, and I disagree. I see Boromir as someone who has failed, but not quite a fail son. He has a fail father for sure, but I see Boromir as a noble person who wants to do right by his people and help his people, but he too can be corrupted by this power, unfortunately. And we get that here when Boromir is trying to convince Frodo that they should use the ring in the fight against evil. "Ah, the ring," said Boromir, his eyes lighting. "The ring! It is not a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt for so small a thing. So small a thing, and I have seen it only for an instant in the house of Elrond. Could I not have a sight of it again?" Frodo looked up. His heart went suddenly cold. He caught the strange gleam in Boromir's eyes, yet his face was still kind and friendly. "It is best that it should lie hidden," he answered. "As you wish, I care not," said Boromir. "Yet may I not even speak of it? For you seem ever to think only of its power in the hands of the enemy, of its evil uses, not of its good. The world is changing, you say. Minas Tirith will fall, if the ring lasts. But why? Certainly, if the ring were with the enemy. But why, if it were with us?" "Were you not at the council?" answered Frodo. "Because we cannot use it, and what is done with it turns to evil." Boromir got up and walked about impatiently. "So you go on," he cried. "Gandalf, Elrond, all these folk have taught you to say so. For themselves they may be right. These elves and half-elves and wizards, they would come to grief, perhaps. Yet often I doubt if they are wise and not merely timid. But each to his own kind. True-hearted men, they will not be corrupted. We of Minas Tirith have been staunch through long years of trial. We do not desire the power of wizard lords, only strength to defend ourselves, strength in a just cause. And behold, in our need, chance brings to light the ring of power. It is a gift, I say, a gift to the foes of Mordor. It is mad not to use it, to use the power of the enemy against him. The fearless, the ruthless, these alone will achieve victory. What could not a warrior do in this hour, a great leader? What could not Aragorn do? Or if he refuses, why not Boromir? The ring would give me power of command. How I would drive the hosts of Mordor, and all men would flock to my banner." Of course, he goes on, he tries to chase Frodo, and he gets very upset with him, and then he realizes what happened to him, what overcame him, and he wants to apologize, and he ends up going back to the rest of the party and letting them know that Frodo's missing, which they already know because it's been quite a while. And the hobbits sort of run off in separate directions. Merry and Pippin go one way, and Aragorn tells Boromir, basically, "I don't know what you did, but chase those two." And he goes after Sam and tells Sam, "Make sure you go back to find Frodo here." And, you know, he goes and finds Frodo, and, yeah, you know, I mean, it's just a wild adventure, and now the Fellowship has been disbanded. Unfortunately, the Two Towers starts with Boromir dying, and I think the movie did it right by having Boromir die at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. You know, it just makes sense in a way. I will defend Boromir always. He does get corrupted. He does also realize his mistakes. and I just think that he's in a desperate situation. He does start talking about how they do need men and power and all this other stuff that he didn't talk about in Rivendell. Anyway, I don't think he's so bad. I think he's a very gray character, and I really like Boromir. So there's that. Thank you.